If you're watching this video, you've probably used AI in some form. Chances are it was a chatbot like ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini. Amazing tools, but everything you type goes to a remote server before the response streams back to your iPhone, iPad, or Mac. That's why you can't use them without being connected to the internet. What if you want to keep everything on device and still chat with AI? That's where Russet comes in. It's built for Apple users and runs fully on device. No accounts, no internet necessary, and no data leaving your device. In Russet, you can choose between two on-device engines. The first is Apple's own foundation model, which runs directly on your device. The second uses MLX, Apple's open source machine learning framework. MLX is designed specifically for Apple Silicon. It leverages the unified memory architecture and can run operations on the CPU or GPU without moving data around. It comes with high-level packages to train and run neural networks, including text generation. Russet implements this by letting you run many open source large language models fine-tuned for runtime efficiency on Apple Silicon. That means you can load models like from the Qwen 3 family, the Gemma 3 family, or Llama directly onto your device and run them completely offline. This video isn't about declaring a winner. It's about showing the differences so you can decide which option fits your needs per chat. Remember, in Russet, you can always choose which model to start a chat with. You're never locked into one. Let's test Russet's Apple Foundation model use. I'll ask it to explain photosynthesis in 2 paragraphs and show you what it said shortly. But first, we can watch that as the answer streams in, the model itself needs to be loaded into memory, and we notice here from the instruments graph that the model takes a while to load and then it generates a response. Altogether, this takes about 3 seconds from the time the user sends a message to when the Apple Foundation model completes its response. Here's the model's response. Now we'll test the MLX model, and specifically we're going to use Gemma 3, but first we're going to copy the exact same prompt that I gave to the Apple Foundation model, and we're going to use Gemma 3 1B, and we'll just paste that prompt in. And as soon as I hit send, you see that it's loading a model, and we're going to add a timer so we see exactly how long it takes for the model to load. And we see here that the time to first token was 1.55 seconds. So after the model was loaded, it took another 1.5 seconds for the first 3 or 4 characters to be streamed. And thereafter, it generated about 50 tokens per second. So altogether, this did take slightly longer than the Apple Foundation model, but as you go on and continue chatting, you might notice the MLX models, at least some of them, may provide higher quality responses than Apple Foundation model. Now, we'll use the activity monitor profile to monitor CPU and memory, that's RAM, for the Apple Foundation model answering the same prompt, explain photosynthesis in 2 paragraphs. Here we see that the CPU usage spikes at the beginning, obviously, because that's when the app launches. And then it again spikes a little bit when I open the list of models that are available and select Apple Foundation model. And finally, we see that it's streaming nicely as the response pours in. And similarly, the memory spikes max to less than 90 megabytes. So things are looking pretty good for the Apple Foundation model here because of all the optimizations that Apple gets to make under the hood for its first party model. And here is the same trace, except instead of using the Apple Foundation model in the activity monitor profile, I'm now using the Gemma 3 1B model. So this took a total of about 25 seconds from the time I launched the app Russet and until I closed it. So in between is when the model was loaded, I asked the question, and the response was streamed. Here we see that the CPU max, the peak CPU is significantly higher than compared to the Apple Foundation model, and we see that it's 16 seconds in. So that's not during launch, that's definitely during, at some point, the model was active. And similarly, the memory also peaks at about 1.3 gigabytes. And that makes sense because the Gemma 3 model, which is an MLX model, needs to be entirely loaded into the memory of the iPhone. And again, we see that the Apple Foundation model sort of edges over the competing MLX models. But again, it always depends on the quality of responses you're looking for, where speed, memory are only one factor.